Is a protein skimmer worth it? I think that the majority of reefers who use a protein skimmer would all shut out with a resounding absolutely if you asked that question. But instead of giving you the shortest possible answer, let's look at how a protein skimmer is worth it. First off, I think it's probably a good idea to address the fact that protein skimmer prices can range quite a bit, not just because of the size of tank that they're rated for, but also in terms of quality, performance, and specialized features. So if you buy the cheapest skimmer possible, you'll likely find it doesn't work very well, and therefore might not be worth it. And also, you could blow a ton of money on the upper echelon skimmers with all the bells and whistles and find it works really well, but given how much you paid, maybe feels a little bit underwhelming. So for that reason, we're going to assume we're talking about a protein skimmer in that budget-friendly mid-tier price range that's a great value for what you spend and also works really well. So with that out of the way, I think the most obvious way that a protein skimmer proves its worth is by pulling out dissolved organics, yellowing pigments, and suspended particulates from our reef aquariums without using any sort of mechanical, chemical, or biological media. By harnessing the power of foam fractionation, a protein skimmer produces millions of tiny bubbles that attract dissolved waste like fish poop, uneaten foods, and other organics that stick to the outsides of those little bubbles, and as they converge and grow into larger bubbles, they draw that waste up and out of the water and deposit it inside of the collection cup, all before ever getting the chance to break down in the water into unwanted excess nutrients that could fuel pest algae and bacterial slime growth. And that sounds pretty fantastic, right? Because, well, it is. In most cases, that means you won't have to do water changes as often since you're going to be removing a good portion of that waste on a regular basis with your protein skimmer. So your aquarium's phosphate and nitrate levels shouldn't rise as quickly. Less water changes means less maintenance on your plate and less salt being used. And less salt being used means you can keep some more of those crisp dollar bills in your pocket. And I say can, because I think the majority of us are just going to reallocate that money to our coral budget. No shame in admitting that, right? I can't be the only one. I'm not the only one, right? I'm not the only one. Those yellowing pigments I was just mentioning before, although they aren't always very obvious, they are more of a pain than you might think. They can have a pretty significant impact on the amount of light that reaches your corals, making your light fixture less efficient than it should be. Removing those pigments is something that all reefers should want to do, and while carbon can definitely do the trick, you'll end up going through quite a bit of it without a protein skimmer helping out. In some cases, you may find that you don't need to run carbon at all, which is another big +1 towards protein skimmers being worth it. Now, aside from filtration, protein skimmers also provide an absolute ton of gas exchange for our reef tanks. All of those tiny microbubbles add up to a vast amount of surface area, likely many times more than the surface area at the top of our aquarium, and are credited with providing the majority of the oxygenation and gas exchange for our reefs. All of that added gas exchange can be a great tool for helping to keep the pH of our aquariums nice and high for our corals, right around that 8.1 to 8.3 mark, where the corals tend to grow best. Especially when paired with a CO2 scrubber, which is becoming increasingly more common since it's such an effective way to get that little bump in pH that many reefers are looking for. Now, on top of that, protein skimmers are also an important part or tool used in other types of filtration methods. A good example being the use of biopellets or ozone. For reefers using biopellet reactors, the excess bacteria that's produced and sloughed off by those biopellets can be removed from the system through protein skimming. With ozone, protein skimmers can make an excellent reaction chamber, and because of that, many skimmers are made to work seamlessly with ozone generators. So for reefers looking at using either of those options for filtration, a protein skimmer has even more value. Protein skimmers are so popular, in fact, that there are all kinds of accessories available for them to make them even easier to use than they already are, as well as just making them more hands-free. I'm talking automatic neck wipers, waste collectors, skimmer cup sensors, and more. Many of the aquarium controllers that are available have settings and tasks dedicated specifically to protein skimmers so that they work even more seamlessly with your entire aquarium system. Now, I'm not saying that everybody must have a protein skimmer to be successful, because that's not true. And yes, there's definitely maintenance that you're going to need to perform on a protein skimmer. like dumping out that full cup of skimmate every week or so and cleaning out the skimmer body and pump periodically. You know, the typical stuff for any piece of reef aquarium gear, and there's still a running cost since it uses electricity like any other pump or filter on your aquarium. But for everything a protein skimmer does and can do, they can be one of the best investments for a reef tank that you can make, which is why I'll always, whenever possible, choose to run a protein skimmer on my personal reef tanks. But honestly, the big question that a lot of people get hung up on with protein skimmers is, how do I even pick the right protein skimmer for my specific tank? Can you trust the size rating that's on the box? Are there other factors that I need to consider? You might be pretty surprised to hear that many of us are getting skimmers that are way too large for our tanks and should have spent less on a smaller skimmer. So, how do you pick the right skimmer? Well, Ryan's actually gonna walk you through that in this video right here, and it's only gonna take 5 minutes, and you should have all the information you need to go through, pick the right skimmer, not waste money, not get the wrong thing, and then you can feel confident you got what you need. Doesn't have to be confusing, just need a little bit of info.